winds of change seem to be blowing at Square Enix direction. We've been having a good chunk of news lately from Square Enix. All of them are related to the restructuring that is happening within the company right now as we speak, and over the next 3 years. They're even dubbing it as the Square Enix Reboots and Awakens. Talk about marketing all the way. From what I could gather, this restructuring has 4 core objectives. 1. A switch to multi-platform. This is no news to anyone. Square Enix no longer has that exclusivity deal with PlayStation, and we can already see that push with Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth being released on the Nintendo consoles. And even Final Fantasy XVI was recently released on the Xbox, with a very negative reception, may I add. But honestly, I don't think there was much of an interest from Square Enix in the beginning to focus that much energy on the Final Fantasy XVI Xbox release. And I can't blame them. Right now, Square Enix probably wants to focus on the games that are coming next and not really Final Fantasy XVI that underperformed in sales. Whatever new installments we will have in the future, it seems like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 will release day 1 on all platforms, and that will be the norm going forward for all major titles and releases. 2. A focus on quality over quantity. Once the 3-year reboot plan ends by March 2027, the expectation of Square Enix is to be in a position where major titles, mainly in key IP, are released in a consistent basis. It is a bit unclear, like what are they actually referring to here, but I am going to assume that they're talking generally speaking about the franchises of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and Kingdom Hearts. Is this good news? Absolutely, but it is a bit unclear in my view what the actual plan is for the mainline entry Final Fantasy games. These games have had like huge amount of inconsistency of when it comes to releases over the last 20 years. Obviously, it's understandable that like video games require a lot more time, more manpower, and more money to release a polished AAA product. But there has been a clear management and production pipeline issue that has plagued this franchise. Whatever the plan is for Final Fantasy XVII, a return to the roots card is absolutely a choice that Square Enix might try and use, with a focus on a turn-based combat, group dynamic, and a narrative that helps to leverage a sense of nostalgia to a lot of old-school Final Fantasy fans. Heck, we might even see a return of the overworld, thanks to games like Clair Obscur Expedition 33 that managed to pull it off beautifully. I do hope that Square Enix is looking at Expedition 33, but doesn't just literally copy what they did in terms of combat. Sure, Expedition 33 does improve on the formula of the turn-based combat quite well, I would say. But I would like to see Final Fantasy take its own route, its own risks, and bring more innovation while taking into account what Expedition 33 did so well. Expedition 33 does feel right now for a lot of Final Fantasy fans like the next Final Fantasy game, and Central Interactive and its CEO have never hid the fact of how influential Final Fantasy was to their game. But I do think that Expedition 33 is kind of like the Dark Souls or the Sekiro of turn-based combat games. I just don't think that Final Fantasy should take that route. 3. Shifting away from outsourcing titles. This may actually help to corroborate a supposed leak from a guy named Midori. This leaker claimed that the Final Fantasy IX remake was initially outsourced to a studio external of Square Enix themselves, but now the project has been taken back in-house. It also might help to understand why we still had no news about this remake, even with its 25-year anniversary. With a full-on restructure within the company and shifting from outsourced to in-house, it would inevitably delay the release of this game. Outsourcing is deeply rooted in the AAA industry now, and Square Enix is still going to make full use of it. Animation, 3D and character design, even concept art, and so much more. Even Final Fantasy VII Remake is using Unreal Engine and the full power and capability of Megascans. So outsourcing is going nowhere as an option for Square Enix. But there is a big difference between giving a company full realm on creating a video game and making the same game in-house with the help of some outsourcing. The latter is right now the norm. 4. Layoffs. These have been happening since last year, unfortunately, after Square Enix failed to meet expectations in terms of digital entertainment sales. From this graph, we can actually see that there is a sharp drop in terms of the actual income from 2023 to 2024. This is what triggered Square Enix to restructure, with layoffs being a part of this equation. 2025 is still a year where Square Enix struggles when it comes to growth, but it now seems to have a lot more control over its costs and management. Don't be surprised to see something similar going on in 2026. While 2027 onward, we might finally see some of those big titles on screen, like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 and even Kingdom Hearts 4, and so the picture might change there. Look, it's no secret to anyone at this point that Square Enix has been trying to find a new formula and identity for the Final Fantasy franchise, and their main objective has always been to appeal to a wider audience and search for bigger profit. This shift kind of began with Final Fantasy 15, with a switch to like a more action game, a focus on a single protagonist, and a fragmented narrative that was quite literally divided between a video game, an anime, and a full-on fledged movie. These were just some of its main core issues in my view, but Final Fantasy 16 really exacerbated these issues, and it brought a massive split in the fandom of Final Fantasy, and further fueling even the discussion regarding what is the identity of Final Fantasy and if it should return to its roots. The cracks obviously did not start with both of these games. Final Fantasy 12 overall story felt a little bit rushed, particularly in the last third of the story, and a lot of people really disliked the overall combat shift. Final Fantasy 13 is still to this day a complete mess if you ask me. I actually recently replayed it, and the only thing that is actually really good about it is the combat. But even then, like, the game just really opens up in the late game, and it makes the combat feel so weak and repetitive. Like when I replayed Final Fantasy 13, I couldn't even finish, I'm not gonna lie to you. Combine this with a focus on spin-off games that truly never made much sense to me, like Strangers of Paradise, and not one but two Final Fantasy 13 sequels. It just kind of makes you wonder how much money you're actually spending on these spin-off games. I would consider this a period of hibernation for Square Enix. We won't see anything major from them until 2027, and I honestly think that's a good thing. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 has been in development for quite a while, so that is going to be a given. What I am excited for is that brand new Final Fantasy title. I still have hopes for Square Enix. A lot of the oldies are still there, regardless of some of the odd ideas that Yoshi P says. He is undoubtedly a very experienced member in the team that helped to deliver what is considered one of the best MMO video games ever made, even though it was heavily based on Final Fantasy 12, but we don't talk about that. So his knowledge and assessment of different situations are definitely a great asset for Square Enix. I think this is actually, generally speaking, apart from the layoffs, really great news from Square Enix. I just hope to not see a Final Fantasy X-3 anytime soon, because my god, if Final Fantasy X-2 already made no sense, X-3 is going to be a massive hole, to say the least. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments, and yeah, make sure to subscribe and have a good one. Over and out.